All right, great. Well, hi, everyone. My name is Christine Campbell, and I am the Senior Admissions Counselor for the online Clinical Mental Health Counseling Program. I'm joined tonight with Dr. Vong Ratts, and he's going to give a presentation tonight, and then we'll conclude with some Q&A. If you've got questions along the way, feel free to put those in the chat, and then we'll get to those toward the end as well. All right. So I'd like to introduce Dr. Ratts. He's the Associate Dean for the College of Education, and he's going to share a little bit about the program and the application process.
Good afternoon or evening, everybody, depending on where you're at in the country. My name again is Dr. Vong Ratts. I'm the Associate Dean in the College of Education and also Professor of Counseling. I've been at Saleh University since 2006. Initially in the counseling program, but now I work solely in the Dean's office in the College of Education. And I'm really excited to be with you all to talk about our online clinical mental health counseling program. We're launching it this fall. It's something that we've been working on the past few years, and we're really excited about this new program that we're launching. The online clinical mental health counseling program mirrors the on-ground program that's on the Seattle University campus. And so I have some slides that I wanted to share with you to kind of give you an overview of the program. And then at the end, perhaps we can entertain some Q&A questions from you all in terms of the program. So I think one thing to kind of know about us is we're a program that's really focused on preparing students to be multiculturally competent, helping professionals and change agents. We have a real big emphasis on social justice in the counseling program. That's an extension of our Jesuit mission. And so what does that look like in the field of counseling? It's really about how do we be a voice for others? How do we use our roles as counselors to help those who are feeling disenfranchised, whether it's because of mental health issues or race-related issues, or if they're living in poverty. I think counselors have a big role in terms of being able to help clients navigate their lives. And so that's what we're really focused on in our program. This program can be completed from anywhere in the United States. You don't have to necessarily be in Seattle to finish the program. That's one of the benefits about being a completely online program. We have small class sizes. Lectures are no larger than 25 to 30 students. The clinical courses are no larger than 12 students to one faculty. The first couple years will be lecture classes, and then as you continue the program, the last year will be your clinical classes. We have flexible scheduling. We have our program is built where there's a combination of asynchronous learning and synchronous learning, and I'll talk a little bit about what that looks like in the next slide. We have faculty who are national leaders in their respective field in counseling. They're well published, they all practice in the field. So not only are they scholars, but they're scholar practitioners in the sense of they're all practitioners in the field who contribute to knowledge in terms of their scholarship in the field. One of the unique things about this online clinical mental health counseling program is there's an addictions component that's built into the curriculum. And that's a benefit for those who live in Washington State and want to practice in Washington State, because what that does is it allows a person to be able to graduate not just with a mental health counseling degree, but also be eligible for a substance use disorder professional certification. Essentially what that means is it allows you to practice as an addictions counselor as long as you are able to meet postmaster requirements. In addition to that, you're also eligible for licensure as a mental health counselor. And the licensure for mental health counseling is not just in Washington State, it's across the United States and various states in the country with some exceptions. We're a 3-year program, full-time program. Students take typically 2 to 3 courses per term. A term is 10 weeks. We're a 90 quarter credit program. The first couple years is asynchronous coursework. And it's not to say you're not going to interact with faculty, but you will interact with faculty, but in an asynchronous format. Faculty will be available, throughout the term for each of the courses that you're taking to kind of supplement some of the things they're teaching asynchronously. It's not required for students to participate in the time that faculty are going to make themselves available for the courses that you take during those first 2 years, but it's an option for students to be able to kind of connect with faculty, learn more about the content that they're learning about in the courses. The third year is the field experience. It's practicum and internship. It's a year-long field experience, and that's where students will be out in the field, whether it's in a mental health agency or a private practice setting, where they're working as clinicians under supervision with a field supervisor, and then they participate in a synchronous supervision course. That's 1 day a week for about 2.5 hours, 3 hours out of the week. So that's the only synchronous learning or requirement that's required in the program for the first 3 years of the program. And then for all those years, as I mentioned earlier, there's an addictions component that's built into the program that will supplement the mental health curriculum that you'll be getting. The other thing that's important to know about the program is there's a summer residency at the Seattle University campus, and that takes place after the first year in the program during the summer, and then after the second year of the program during the summer. That summer residency will be on a weekend. It will be a Friday through Sunday format, 1 weekend after the first year, and then 1 weekend after the second year. That first summer residency is really focused on building clinical skills. It's focused on how do you develop counseling skills as a counselor, and the only way to kind of really learn those things is at least we think in person. So it's connected to a course that you'll be taking during the summer term. You'll also be learning advocacy skills in terms of how do you develop advocacy skills and be an empowerment-based clinician, if you will. That second year is focused on building group counseling skills. It's where you'll participate as a member of a group to learn what it is like to be sitting in a group, just like a client would be. And that's part of the K-Cup requirements, is that students participate in these clinical building courses and experiences, if you will. So the first year will be predominantly asynchronous, but then the end of that first year during the summer, there's a weekend format, 1 weekend summer residency, and then that happens again during the second year in the program on the Seattle University campus. We have a placement coordinator who will work with students after their completion of the first year, even though you don't participate in the internship and practicum until after the third year. Students will work closely with a placement coordinator really the beginning of that second year in the program to help students identify placements that are appropriate, placements that will give students the experience they need to be able to develop as skilled clinicians in that third year. So that second year, in addition to taking asynchronous courses, you'll work closely with our placement coordinator to identify a placement, whether it's at a mental health agency or private practice setting, that'll provide you with the experience you need to obtain the hours, not just for the degree, but also licensure in whatever state that you reside in. One thing that's important to note is that we're requiring students to participate in the field experience, the practicum and internship in the United States. So it can't be internationally. And mainly that's because of, we know what the laws are within the different states in our country, but we don't necessarily know what they are in other countries. And so we're requiring the field experience to be done in the United States. So the first 2 years can be done really remotely anywhere in the country, except that third year where you're participating in the practicum and internship. We're a cohort-based model, and that's really important because what it does is it allows you to kind of develop relationships, professional relationships with other students in the field. So you start together and you move through the program together beginning in the fall term. And that's not to say that you can't step out, right? Because life happens, we recognize that. But if you were to step out, you would just step right back in and likely into a new cohort. So you just join a new cohort in the program. That happens every so often with students in our land-based or on-ground counseling program. Every student will be also assigned a faculty advisor who will work closely with you from the very get-go when you start the program all the way to the end. And I think one thing to kind of keep in mind is that you're entering a field, a professional field. And so the relationship, the professional relationship that you have with a faculty member doesn't end once you graduate from the program. And in fact, it continues well beyond after you graduate, you know, in the program, because they help you in terms of licensure after that and other professional related work that you might engage in the field. So it's a professional relationship that for some students lasts quite a while after graduation. So both of our school counseling and clinical mental health counseling programs that are on ground are accredited by KCREP. KCREP stands for the Council for Accreditation of Counseling and Related Educational Programs. That's a mouthful. The online program currently is not KCREP accredited. We're seeking KCREP accreditation right now. It's a 3-year process, and KCREP's policy, just like any other accreditation body, is that when you start a new program, it initially isn't accredited. But you know, one of the things to note is that the students who start this program in the fall will have an opportunity to be considered KCREP graduates by the time they graduate. And that's really important to know, because that helps with portability, licensure, and ease of licensure, and all that stuff. And it also prepares students for doctoral level work should they wish to pursue doctoral studies in the future. But we're pretty confident that we'll be able to obtain KCREP accreditation, mainly because the program is built around the is really a spitting image or mirrors the online, or I mean the on-ground clinical mental counseling program. So we're very confident that we'll be able to receive accreditation. That said, you know, nothing's guaranteed till the end, but we're pretty confident, and the program is built to mirror the on-ground program in terms of courses, in terms of assignments, and in terms of faculty. So, but this is something that every new program goes through when they initially launch. You know, so you can't be accredited right away, but you can once that first group of students graduate. So our program, when you graduate from the program, everybody receives a master's degree in clinical mental health counseling. They are also eligible for an addiction certificate, the substance use disorder professional certification in the state of Washington. And then they're eligible to pursue licensure as mental health counselors in respective states based on whatever the postmaster's licensure hours or requirements are in those respective states. And usually it's anywhere from 1,500 hours to 3,000 hours postmaster's work, depending on the state. But the coursework is what really prepares you to be able to be eligible for postmaster's level work for mental health licensure. We have a variety of scholarships in the field that are available to counseling students. Some of the scholarships are College of Education-wide scholarship for any student, and then some are focused solely on counseling students. We have scholarships for students in financial need and need-based scholarships. All those won't be determined until once a student is accepted, and it's part of the admissions letter a student will receive in terms of if they're eligible for any scholarships within the College of Education. That said, all students are eligible for financial aid loans. I would say most of our students on the on-ground program are on some sort of financial aid, some shape or form. All students also work full-time in the program. It's not until that 3rd year in the program when they enter a practicum and internship will they go to part-time work or no work at all, or they'll switch the hours in which they work from daytime to evening because the internship takes place during the daytime. We have alums who are placed really in a variety of different areas within the mental health field, from those who work in mental health agencies, those who work in schools as school-based mental health clinicians or counselors, those who work in the higher education setting, whether it's at community colleges or universities. Some of our students will graduate and branch out and open up a private practice. And for every state that differs, but usually they're working with another private practice clinician, supervising that person to get licensure and then learn the ropes around private practice work. Some will just enter the field of consultation and do consultation work around a specialty area, or work in hospital settings as mental health advocates, and some, not all students, at least not right away, will pursue doctoral level studies, their doctorate in counseling. Our application deadline is April 1st, 2022 for the fall start date. We don't have students who start in the summer. It's an online application, and there's a few items that you need to submit. One is a letter of intent, really focused on our mission, the counseling program mission, and that's really what we look for is mission fit. Does this person aspire to kind of be a change agent? Do they have similar values as us as a program in terms of what we're trying to achieve, which is preparing students to be change agents in the field of counseling? A 2-page resume, letters of recommendations from employers, and then a College of Education self-evaluation form that you fill out. So those are the documents that you need to submit. And one of the questions we get asked a lot is, which is most important? It's all important. It's all based on the point system. So you want to be very mindful of who you select for the letter recommendations, and how you write, what you include in your resume, and what you write in your letter of intent. Everybody who applies needs to have at least a bachelor's degree at the time of the start of the program, which is in the fall term. We recognize that some students are currently finishing or will be finishing their bachelor's degree in the spring or summer term. As long as you have it fully completed from an accredited institution by the time the program starts in the fall, you should be good to go. We require official transcripts, and then also a minimum GPA of 3.0. If you're a graduate of a university that does not do grades, that's fine. All we ask is that you also submit GRE scores. So that way we can kind of look at kind of your aptitude, if you will, around academics. I went through that really quickly, mainly because I wanted to really give you all an opportunity to ask me any questions about the program. But I recommend jotting our names down, Christine's name and then mine, in our emails. If you have further questions about the program, we're more than happy to answer any questions that you might have related to the program. So with that being said, I kind of want to open it up now to the floor up to see if anybody has questions that you'd like to ask me or even Christine related to the program.
Vong, one question I get from people is, what's the difference between a clinical mental health counseling degree and a counseling degree?
Yeah, not much difference beyond just the name. What you do with the degree is very much the same. That said, what I will say is there are some states that will specify you have to have a master's in clinical mental health counseling. So that's something to kind of be to recognize. Whatever state that you're in is not just what the degree requirement is, but what's the name of the degree your state wants you to kind of have. But for the most part, there's not much difference in terms of what you're able to do with a master's degree in counseling and a master's degree in clinical mental health counseling. That's a good question. Other questions?
I have a couple, if you don't mind, Dr. Ratts.
Yep.
Okay, so I have talked to Christine a bit. Thank you, by the way, Christine, for answering many of my questions already. But for someone that's focused on working with children or adolescents, I noticed in the curriculum that there are some classes that are purely focused on children and adolescents, but do you think that this program would sufficiently equip someone to work with adolescents if that's the route they choose?
It would, and I think a couple things that I want to kind of say about that in terms of your question. One is, no matter what master's degree counseling program you enter, or even doctoral degree, it pretty much is a generalist degree in terms of it provides you with the foundational knowledge and skills to be a clinician. That said, there are some coursework that focuses on specific populations, and what you're talking about is children and adolescents. So we have a course focused on that. And then we also have a family systems class that focuses a component of it on children and adolescents. And then we have a lifespan development class where a third of that class focuses on children and adolescents. You know, so you take the course or the program. The first 2 years is really a generalist degree. Your internship is where you really will focus on a specific population. So if you really want to work with children and adolescents, our placement coordinator would work with you to identify mental health agencies or sites where the focus is solely on children and adolescents. For example, it's not uncommon for students in our program who want to work with children and adolescents to work at a school-based mental health agency where they're mental health clinicians, but working in K-12 schools, not as school counselors, but as mental health counselors. So you'll do your internship in that setting, specifically with that agency. Or if you want to work with, you know, domestic violence issues, well, you know, make sure to place you for that last year at a site where that's the population that you work with. Or if you want to work with LGBTIQ populations, we'll make sure to place you in a site that allows you to kind of work with that community. So you have foundational skills, knowledge and skills, but you can kind of tailor that, and every student will tailor that their focus based on their passion, if you will. I don't know if that answers your question.
Perfectly.
Jessica.
No, that answered perfectly. And I did see in your presentation that you've had students that have graduated and gone on to work in school-based or just schools. Yep. So that was really excited to see that. Do you mind if I ask you a couple more?
Yep.
Okay, I really appreciate your time. Okay, so for the summer residency, that is solely focused on clinical experience, the Friday through Sunday, and that does seem like the best way to gain clinical experience. But throughout the year, are there also classes that are focused as much as they can be online on clinical experience?
There are other classes that you will take that have a clinical component to it, but it's the live supervision. So we have a counseling lab, a clinic on campus, and so that's where you'll work with through role play, work with clients in that lab. But we have other courses that's where you'll develop clinical-based counseling skills throughout the first and second year in the program. So it wouldn't be like all of a sudden after your first year, it's your very first time developing clinical skills. It kind of builds up to it.
Great. Just because that preparation would be so important, and 2 weekends doesn't seem sufficient to, go see clients. Okay, well, so that is great.
It's also sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but it's also a great way to kind of see your colleagues in person, because they're all day workshops that we have, and also a great way to interact with faculty in person that, you don't get in a asynchronous format, throughout the academic year, if you will. So there's a relationship community building component that is part of it that we think is really important. So that way students feel like they're a part of a larger community.
Okay.
You had another question.
I did. I have 2 more. I'm sorry.
Okay, that's fine.
I think they'll be quick. And hopefully everybody's
Didn't you say you had 2 questions before? And now, no,
I think I might have. Maybe it was a few-ish to start. So you about the KCREP accreditation, it
Yes.
sounds like this is standard, and you know, you don't usually get that accreditation, like you said, until after the first cohort has graduated.
Yep.
But like you said, nothing happens until it happens. So just out of curiosity, as unlikely as it would be, what would happen if Seattle University did not receive KCREP accreditation for this online program?
Yeah, that's a good question. Before I answer that, I think one thing to know is the on-ground program was the first counseling program in the Seattle area to receive KCREP, to pursue and receive KCREP accreditation.
Wow.
You know, and we're fully accredited through 2024 or 2025. It's an 8-year accreditation, so it's our second time receiving reaccreditation. We were one of the first programs to be fully accredited with the new KCREP standards. And I share that to say, you know, in some ways we're trailblazers in terms of accreditation within mental health counseling in our state, and then specifically in King County. That said, you know, one of the benefits to receiving accreditation is it eases the ability to receive licensure. In some states, Washington is one of those. Is everybody in Washington? Okay, some people, most people are, not everybody is. I'll give you an example. In Washington State, if you're a graduate of a non-KCREP program, you can still get licensed as a mental health counselor, but the hours required for licensure is more. In the state of Washington, it's 3,000 hours, but if you're a KCREP graduate, it's only 2,500 hours, because you can use your hours accumulated during your internship towards that licensure. So that knocks off about 6 months to a year of postmaster's work before you gain full licensure. And full licensure is really what people work towards, because it allows you to really seek reimbursement if you wanted to open up a private practice, for example, and stuff. So in other states, you know, it really varies. It might require you to do more coursework. It might require you to do more postmaster's hours. Every state varies in terms of what's required. So what I would recommend is to look at what your requirements are within your state in terms of licensure. That said, you know, what I'll tell you is that our program is 90 quarter credits, which is equivalent to 60 semester hours. That's usually, one, that's a KCREP requirement, but two, that's usually the max number of credits, whether it's semester or quarter hours, that most states will require. And because our program aligns with KCREP in terms of the content, in terms of the courses that we offer, we feel pretty confident that we offer all the content required in respective states. There are some states where we don't meet those requirements, and you know, if you're an applicant in one of those programs, we would let you know well before you were admitted, you know, that these are the requirements in your state. You know, every state also has different postmaster's hours, and so when you enter the program, we'll let you know these are the hours for Idaho, these are the hours for Nebraska, these are the postmaster's hours for, or even internship hours for New York State. So that way, when you're in practicum and internship, you can be pretty assured that you're going to meet the internship hours for that state, if that makes sense.
Very much.
One of the things that the counseling profession is working towards right now is national licensure. We're not there yet, but what we're recognizing is that every state has different licensure requirements, and that impacts people's livelihoods. You know, but we're not there yet in terms of national licensure, but we're working towards it as a profession. But one of the things that helps towards that is KCREP accreditation, and you know, it's just one of the things we have to go through in terms of getting accredited. Is we have to initially apply for licensure, do a self-study, and then submit the self-study to KCREP for accreditation. So folks, by the time they graduate, they'll know whether we're accredited. You know, but I feel pretty confident because all the faculty are graduates from KCREP programs, and we're pretty familiar with the accreditation process.
Well, and like
we
you
have
said,
a good relationship
it
with them.
mirrors the on-campus program.
Yeah, but in terms of coursework, in terms of every course objective that's in the online program is in the on-ground program. The assignments that are required for the on-ground program are also required for the online program with some twists in terms of making it applicable to the online program. But I'll share with you that we've been in communication with KCREP over the last couple of years, well before we launched this program, to make sure that what we're building is something that they're going to be okay with. So it's not something where we all of a sudden submit an application and they're like, oh, look,
Yeah.
CLU's wanting to have their online program accredited. It's something we've been in communication with them really for the past couple of years.
Okay, that's great. Okay, my
That said,
final one.
nothing's guaranteed.
Yeah, yeah, of course. It sounds pretty guaranteed. But my final one was just, could you elaborate just a little bit on the timeline of the process of the application is due April 1st, and then what could we expect after that as far as a timeline and maybe interviewing and things like that? Is it a few month process?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the applications are due April 1, and then it goes right to graduate admissions, and it takes graduate admissions a couple weeks to go through the applications to make sure everybody has the minimum requirements, the paperwork. Then it goes to the counseling program, and so that's 2 weeks later, and then it takes them a couple weeks to sift through the applications, and then they select from the paper applications a certain number of students that they want to admit into the program, and then there's group interviews. So that happens 2 weeks after that. It's a group interview, all on Zoom, where students participate in a group interview where they meet the faculty, and about 2 weeks after that group interview is decisions, and so students will be emailed decisions in terms of whether they were admitted or whether they were not admitted into the program. What I can share is that the first cohort, they're looking at taking in 25 to 30 students into the cohort. And then if for whatever reason, if you're not selected into the program, I would encourage you to reapply into the program. It's not unusual for the on-ground program for students to not get admitted because it comes down to a numbers game. There's only a certain number of seats that we have available. Even though this is an online program, there's many seats. We only have a certain number of faculty. And this is one of the nice things about KCREP is quality control. They want to make sure there's not, there's a certain number of student to faculty ratio. So that way you're not sitting in a class of 50 students or 100 students. And stuff. So that's why the small class sizes of 25 to 30 students in a lecture class, even though it's asynchronous learning, but then the clinical experience that last year, that cohort of 25 to 30 would be broken down to 12 students in a cohort where they participate in internship out in the field, but then they sign on via Zoom for a synchronous supervision course, where it's really just it's a seminar type format where you watch videos of and talk about the clients you're working with under supervision of a faculty member. So that experience, no more than 12 students to one faculty member. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Very much. Thank you.
Good.
Okay,
Good.
That's all my questions, and I'm done pestering you now. Thank you, Dr. Ratts, and thank you, Christine.
You weren't
great
pestering.
questions.
I think those are really good questions.
Thank you. Thanks.
Other questions? Go ahead, Heather.
I apologize for being late, and I'm sure you covered this, but I just want to make sure. So is this the first cohort doing the online program? Okay. But your campus program is accredited, and the process for becoming accredited is somewhat ambiguous. And so you can't say like, oh, we go through a 5-year process to become accredited, or.
Yeah, So for a program to be accredited, for a new program, this is for any program. For a new program, this is, considered a new program because it's an online modality, if you will. For a new program to be accredited by KCREP, it has to go through the self-study process, and that's a 3-year process. So what we're anticipating is that after the second year, we're going to submit. We're working on the self-study now. After the initial cohort, second year in the program, we're going to submit the self-study. It's a 100+ page document that we submit to KCREP, basically saying this is how we meet KCREP standards in terms of the curriculum, in terms of the resources for faculty, in terms of the content of the courses, in terms of all the course offerings. And then KCREP will review that, and then within the following year, by the end of the following year, they'll issue out their kind of decision in terms of whether we receive KCREP or not. But it's standard protocol. It's what we went through with the on-ground mental health counseling program and school counseling program. But we're pretty confident that we'll get accreditation because this online program really mirrors the on-ground program. If you look at the other online programs that are out there, it's the very same steps they went through for accreditation. And I think that's important because what KCREP wants to determine is not just do they meet the standard, but are students going to get a quality experience in their education? Do they have the right courses in the program? Are certain content covered in the various courses that students take in the program? That's one of the values of graduating from a KCREP program, beyond just it uses portability of licensure. It allows you to get licensed easier in certain states, but it also makes sure you have a certain experience in your graduate education. And so that's what they're going to be looking for is in our program is kind of, do they actually offer what they say they offer? Do they actually have faculty with doctoral degrees in the field of counseling, for example? Does the university have the library resources for students to be able to do research in their courses? So that's some of the things they look for. Are students having certain experiences in their internship? What are the minimum requirements for internship in terms of hours that the program requires? Does that align with KCREP? So those are some of the things that they look for, and is why we feel pretty confident, because we built it to mirror the on-ground program. And it's really an extension of the on-ground program that, because of the pandemic, has really been online these past couple of years. Does that answer your question, Heather? Caitlin, I think your hand's up. I see a hand. And then
Yes,
Caroline.
I have. Can you hear me?
Yep, perfectly.
Oh, okay. I have a question that I'd like to ask after the recording's done, but my one question that I was going to ask is about access to like resources at the university, because I'm in Bellingham. Like if we wanted to come down to like work on research or utilize the library, I mean, do we have all the same privileges as someone that is in the in-person program?
You do. Everybody will have, a campus ID. Everybody will have access to be able to use all the resources that the on-ground or on-campus students use, including the library. That said, I don't know how many of our on-ground students have really stepped into the library, because so many of the resources that are available in the library are available online.
Yeah.
Now, whether it's e-articles or books that are now online. But so you will have access to that. And then, in terms of access, you also have access to faculty, just like you would if you were an on-ground student. And so what does that look like? What that means is there may be opportunities to do research with faculty. Usually how it starts is a faculty member recognizes you have certain passion around a particular topic that they do. And so they ask you to be a part of their research team. And so that's an opportunity for you. And for those who are looking at pursuing doctoral studies, that might be a nice thing to kind of have in your vita or resume, if you will, in terms of research experience and with a faculty member and publication experience. But that usually is kind of one of those things that starts organically with a faculty member, but you'll have access to faculty like you would on the on-ground program. I think one thing to know is that whether you're an online student or an on-ground clinical mental health counseling student, that's one of the things that makes SU and this program really unique. Not just our emphasis on social justice, but also our emphasis on relationships with students, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I guess I just wanted, I have my teaching certificate, which I did online about 10 years ago, and obviously the technology has changed, but I was looking forward to some in-person like interaction with faculty or even cohort members.
Yep.
If you could, like, are most of the faculty of the online program going to be based in Seattle, or are they all over too?
They'll be based across the United States. But what I'll share is that when you take courses throughout the first couple of years, even though they're asynchronous, faculty will have built-in times during the week where they're not office hours per se, in the sense of office hours are just kind of, really informal, but where faculty will be able to be available for students at a certain time during the week, time during the day, during the week, where they talk about the curriculum for that week or that few weeks, not every week in the term, but throughout the term, faculty will be able to be accessible to students live like this in this type of format. And then of course we have the summer residency as well, where students can really connect. So we built in some relationship building components into the program that we think are important, because I think it's really about hoping that you feel like you're a part of a larger community, that you're not just taking a course here and there and not developing these professional relationships.
My last question was about, well, this is the last question I'm cool with being recorded for. It's about, you mentioned like practicum opportunities in the schools. Like I work in the school system, and I know we have 3 licensed mental health counselors now in our school district, with the intention of hiring more. I am really interested in continuing to work in the school system. I just not interested in being a gen ed teacher anymore. Is there like, could you support an interest in like working in the schools?
We can,
practicum hours?
We can, and we do have students who do their practicum and internship in schools as mental health counselors, but they're not contracted out with the district. They're contracted out. The contract is with the mental health agency, and so it's you're a mental health counselor with an agency that happens to work in a school. So your office is in the school building, but your employer or your internship supervisor is the mental health agency. Does that make sense?
So we can't do it even if our district has mental health counselors, licensed, not school counselors, like licensed mental health counselors.
You can do it as long as they meet our requirements for being a site supervisor. So they have to be fully licensed as a counselor, not the initial license, but fully licensed as a mental health counselor. They have to have a certain number of years of experience in the field. And then of course you have to have they have to guarantee you a caseload of clients in schools. That usually that's not a problem in a private office setting. So that would work.
Okay. There is an agency right next to my high school that does what you are talking about. And sometimes they have sessions with students like in our buildings, but it's like literally right next door. So it sounds like there's options to make it easy. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and we have students with really, you know, I don't say unique needs, but certain passions or populations they want to work with. And so you'll work with a placement coordinator to identify a site that allows you to work with specific populations, if you will.
I just
Caroline.
thought of one more. I'm so sorry.
Oh, hi, Caitlin.
The hours that we do during the master's program, are we allowed to use those towards our state licensing hours? Like there was another program at Seattle U that said the hours counted towards state licensure. No, it was like the marriage and family.
Yeah, if so it depends on the state. Some states won't allow you to use whether you're a K-CAP graduate or not, internship hours towards licensure. So it depends on the state. In the state of Washington, if you're a graduate from a K-CAP program, then you can use 500 hours towards the 3,000 postmasters hours that are required if you're a K-CAP graduate. Caroline, did I say your name correctly?
Yes. It's
okay.
Yeah, I've got one specific question for me. So I've got a foreign master's of arts and education. And my question for the application process is there a person I could send perhaps my degrees before to check if it's everything okay as it's from Germany? And if the translation is the correct one, is there a person I could send it to for like a first check, not that that one small detail is wrong and it won't get admitted to the program because of this detail, which would have been easily fixable?
Yeah. I don't know, Christine, if you have the response for this.
Yeah, I can take that question. As long as your degree was a 4-year degree, so some countries the degree is a 3-year bachelor's.
5.
Oh,
It's a master. And
and a master. No,
yeah.
you should be fine then. And I wouldn't say there's a need to send them in to have them looked at carefully. What will happen is you'll upload them and then the graduate program will look at them and just make sure everything's okay. They would reach out to you if they had any questions, but that shouldn't slow down your application.
Yeah, I was a little bit worried about the grades, about the GPAs, because I'm not sure. Like, I think we have the scales otherwise round in Germany, and then I'm not sure. I have to check it again. Okay. Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah.
But we have, I will just add this in here. Our admissions program deals with many thousands of foreign transcripts, and we have someone in that office who is just exceptional. We're very lucky to have her. So don't worry, just send it in and she'll help, she'll get that figured out, and then you'll know.
Okay, thank you.
You mentioned kind of grades and minimum GPA and stuff like that. Well, the program has a 3-point, it's really a preference for a 3-point GPA. The program will admit from time to time students whose GPA is less than 3-point, especially for students who really show mission fit and potential to be a counselor, and for example, they're working out in the field as a case manager for the last year or two, and they feel, and their vita or resume really shows that they have this potential, so we look at all of it. So.
I was a school psychologist in Germany for 6 years, and I'm just worried because we've got the grades from 1 to 6, and so it's a total mess. So I check it again and see that everything is okay with the grades here. Okay, thank you.
You bet. Other questions? Emily, then Heather. I don't know who was first, Heather or Emily.
I had a question about the dual licensure with the substance use disorder. You said that the information is built into the curriculum. So is this something that is based on like where we will apply for licensure, whether we will have to do like a different, I don't know, like application or test to be certified under that, or?
Yeah, there's postmaster's work for the substance use disorder professional certificate, the addiction certificate in the state of Washington. And there's an exam that you would take, but the curriculum that we have integrated throughout the curriculum addictions and substance use content that meets Washington state requirements. So that allows you to do the postmaster's work. Whereas before, and in many master's level mental health counseling programs, whether it's in this state or other states, it's students graduate, they work towards their mental health counselor licensure, then they go back to school, usually at a community college, to earn their addiction certificate, and that's another 2 years in the program. What we did was we just integrated it for our students, and this is solely for the state of Washington. We integrated it for our students, so that way when they graduate, they're eligible for mental health licensure as well as addiction certification, also known as the substance use disorder professional certificate in the state of Washington. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so
And
is there still additional, you said additional work postmasters, is that something that the state has set up? Like we would just need to go through like a certificate program?
Yeah, not necessarily coursework in the state of Washington, but postmaster's hours, just like mental health licensure. There's no coursework you do for your licensure as a mental health counselor. It's just hours that
accruing the hours
requires you.
Okay.
Right, under supervision, and there's no way to accrue those hours while you're in the program because they want you to do it after you graduate. So that's a good question. Heather.
Thank you. And again, I apologize if you covered this already, but it is a cohort, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then how long is it? 3 years? And then the practicum. I'm a teacher, so I'm always like,
no, that's fine.
It's a practicum or whatever you call it.
So it's a 3-year program, 2 years of coursework and 1 year of practicum and internship. Practicum is 1 term. The internship is 3 academic terms. The term is 10 to 11 weeks long. The practicum and internship are in person at a mental health agency or college counseling center or school or private practice setting, and it has to be in person with the supervisor. So typically in that last year, you're on site anywhere from the practicum 2 days a week, you're on site typically. The internship anywhere from 3 days to 4 days a week, typically 3 days a week. It really depends on the internship site that you're at. So it's really based on the site in terms of how many days out of the week that you need to be there, and also the student, in terms of what they're able to do in terms of the time they have available. But most students will do 2 to 2.5 days a week during the practicum, and then 3 days to 3.5 days a week for the internship experience. And they're usually during the day because that's when agencies are open or private practice centers or hospital settings are open. And so what that means is usually students go to part-time work, paid work, or they find a job that allows them to work in the evening or the weekends. And then during the first 2 years, people work full time, so.
Well, I want to make sure that we're respectful of everyone's time, and I also want to make sure that Caitlin has a chance to ask her question off recording. So does anyone have any other questions before we take, or where we stop the recording so that Caitlin can ask her question? No? Okay. Christine, you want to stop the recording for us?